all we've got to live is now. It's kind of obvious, but I have to remember this and not just remember it, but just to live with it. Yesterday, after going through this other experiences like near death and hearing my friend diagnosed as terminal cancer, yesterday I had also something unexpected to happen. I'm not going to go into detail, but that was a visit to a doctor, and I was told something, and then I had some influence, some concern. On the way back driving, I thought, well, this, well, that, and then I tried to be in the now, the present, and to observe I am, what I'm doing, and then figuring out figuring out into the future, but figuring out at the moment. So what's most important, and the topic of this discussion is about living in the now, and because what we got is now. In the previous videos, I've talked about expect and expected, as an example of the topic. The reason of doing that video was to be prepared, and I still need to, and all we can prepare is actually not to prepare. You only need to be at the present, at the moment we live, and to see what's going on. Of course, our mind moves, and then related to that, we got energy or orientation of our awareness into that movement, and what happens this, what happens that, and therefore the mind moves more along with it. But then you see the moment of that movement of the mind and generating all the scenarios and difficulties or the opportunities and so forth, we lose the moment of now. So we have to go back to the moment of now while we may postulate what to happen. Because when you postulate things at the moment of now, so there's nothing wrong about it, but we forget about being in the now, but get involved in the postulation of what is to happen, this and that, and what if, and or what it could have been, and all that kind of stuff. All happening in the now, but at the end, I'm like in a dream, not the reality of being in the now. The reality is my figuring out what to do, postulating, and outcome, the opportunities. So that yes, it may be important, but is it important now to study? If there's imminent danger coming up in the very near future, you have to address it. But if it's coming up possibly in the future, you may not have to. Because if you spend time doing it, then you lose the being. And then you can ask the question, what's the point of being if there's a threat in the future? But if we live our life looking at the threat in the future, whatever happened in the past and what we could have done, we're not living in the now. And what's the lessons learned out of that experience? The main lessons learned to me is that many of those could be quite useless. It's a probability of whatever happened and also whatever you could learn from the past, and what is the probability of what you can do in the future to prepare for that, yes. But the reality of the reality is that we have to acknowledge what's going on now. And to be able to do that, we need to have a calm and quiet mind. No mind, empty mind. As if there's different identity, different space to look at this whole thing. Otherwise, we are captured in the future and in the past. And that is in the now, but that now is vague because we are busy bouncing around In the meantime, in the now is amazing stuff. And that's the realization of what I found this morning. Yesterday, after 5 o'clock or so, I start to be concerned about whatever was taking place at the time in relation to the future. But then later, the evening and this morning, it cleared up. At least I think it's cleared up. The point is that I have to inculcate in mind to be present, to have that empty mind, open mind, as if I use the term mirror mind. There are things moving outside, but there's something steady. A different way of saying in the Zen term is that there are waves up there, but at the ocean at the bottom it's calm. Or you can say that scientifically, perhaps, there's mind moving in the brain, this and that occupies all the screen in your space. But there's a watcher of that screen who are quiet, if there is, and if you notice. And that entity or identity, if there is, it's not you, but it's something much bigger, or you can call it awareness, because there's awareness of what's happening instead of not having the awareness and just running all over the place. So we need to get back to the basics of the construct of who we are to know what that awareness is. And the easiest term that I can think of is the no mind and the nothingness and emptiness, and in the void is all the actions taking place. But if we don't know that there's a void or emptiness or awareness to look at in the space, we are actors of the play of what's happening in the future and what could have happened in the past. And when we do that, that awareness of being able to see through that is gone. So that is the realization. It took hours to really come to it. I felt that I had the sense of it, at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and so forth. But it wasn't clear. And then back home, and I start to get kind of bogged down that what could happen. So there's a moment and the time and a little frustration that happened. But sleeping and waking up, and actually I think that may have helped. There's a bird sitting in the tree. And looking at the bird, what I thought was, it's a weird thinking, I'm off from my mind perhaps, but I thought was, if I'm the bird, what is the scenery I look at? If I'm the bird sitting in the tree on the branch, and, I see it, that next to him was some flowers, and he's just sitting. And I know that in more or less, I picture that in the bird's mind is the emptiness and just awareness of being. So there's awareness of being in the bird and others, but the human beings have that awareness, but often it's lost because we are busy with using the mind of A to B to C to D, and whatever X happens, what's the cause of that, and whatever X and Y happens, then what is the next thing that should be prepared and all that. So I spend lots of time, okay, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, as if living in there. But the other notion that I have, which I wanted to talk about, we'll do so perhaps in the future, is instead of using logic and sensing, there's also an image of what's going on in broader terms, from this scene to that scene and that scene to the next scene. But if we can not to be too much involved in the specific steps and what if and then what and all that, but rather to look at the general direction of what's going on, like in the image, or the image in that emptiness, that the scene is changing A to B to C to X and Z, and then you think, oh, what a crazy scene. And you don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. So go back to the zero base, so to speak, is the awareness itself, or the emptiness, or no mind, and the empty mind, or calm and quiet mind. Because that's the state of all the events to happen. But as a participant, we think that's what we see is everything in that scenario, but not see us going through the scenario of, as if up from out of the space, or looking at the screen. The watcher of the screen is quiet, calm. But the participant in the screen is me, thinking that's everything, and you don't know about this watcher, the alert, quiet mind, and awareness, so that we act on that role of, okay, I'm like this, and then this can happen. Okay, I can picture me doing this, and therefore I have to work on this. And if this happens, what's the next, and all that kind of scenario. But the scenario is played by me being fully engaged in that, as if that's the reality. But that's not. That's truly not. It's just the imagination. And I'm losing what I said I wanted to prepare myself to be a lot. I wanted to prepare for the unexpected, or expect the unexpected by being a lot. But when I lose the position, and then we start playing the game, then we are lost in playing the game, as if that's the whole thing, except that's in our imagination. Okay, that may be the reality in future, but we don't know that. I may die before that to happen. The impermanence may hit, and who knows? This is the last moment that I've got, last breathing I've got here. But I may be off to the tangent of whatever that is happening in my imagination, and I'm living that as if I'm torturing myself. Okay, what I do, and what do I do or don't do. Wow. I think that's a little clearer. I think it's clear after the fact when you are off from that yourself. I call it mini-me, or the me playing this, but there's another big me, or just total awareness, or the presence, or nothingness, in this space of no mind. So there's no mind where things takes place, more or less, and that there's movement which is off into the imagination of the world and the scenario. And we have ability to be in the now and this moment and be alert, aware of what's going on, everything, all the sensory things, and also within ourselves, whatever movement, activity, and all that, we can train ourselves because it's already there, but may have to train to be more onto it, that you see that happen. Then you are settled from that home base when you go into different directions for different scenarios. We want to be the master of our destiny. And if we are running around chasing this scenario, that scenario, you can learn from that. And you go back to the, okay, whatever happened and what could have happened, and you can learn from that. But having learned that, at a certain point you want to say enough is enough. You don't have to keep repeating the same stuff. You can have a little modification, this and that. You want to explore that other options, okay. But don't lose the focus of the whole picture or whole idea of what's going on. When you have that, you are at home and you can be clear to see what's going on in your mind, in the surroundings, the bird, the leaves, in the wind, the flower, and your stomach or the feet or sensation or liveliness, and be with that liveliness as who we are, observing the whole thing, appreciating probably, or just being, because there's a clarity. If we get there or be there and maintain there, and then I notice my washing dishes, humming whatever the song I popped up in my mind, one after the other, cleaning up this and that, and look at myself. I know I was happy doing it. Nothing bothered in the process of cleaning up the dish and organizing things, the things I bought into certain storage. Okay, I made mistake. Okay, I fixed it. This is better organized. It's cleaner, as if the mind is cleaner in doing so. In the other case, which is about the scenario and the movie scenes. So we need to keep clearing up. And probably that's one of the lessons the Buddha taught. There's a guy who is, let's call him a little slow to learn. But he was instructed to clean up whatever the setting, the dirt on the floor, whatever. And he realized he got awakened. And that's what we need. There are lots of stuff need to be organized better and have a good discipline. And actually, that's something I wanted to share in the YouTube, continuing to what I have been posting. But this incident that happened yesterday afternoon and evening kind of fit to that theme. But with this experience of what I have gone through, I'm more in tune to that point, which I may revisit, because that's the critical point. In the most recent videos, I talked about the PDCA, CAPD, and the Sila Samadhi Panya, the right conduct, have a calm and quiet mind, and gain insight. But that needs to be practiced from moment to moment, so that our judgment and the insight pops up without us getting lost. So this is just a brief reminder for myself and for those who may be listening. I don't know if I'm communicating the point, but if I can summarize, okay, we'll have ability to come up with ideas and insight. We think so hard and spend time, and then as if from the subconsciousness that idea pops up and we find a way. So it's more of a longer term cycle, but in every day, every moment that we live, there's always that smaller moment to moment process of identifying the potential of us to go through that insight generation process, because if you're not careful, we just go into that labyrinth, the road with all the scenarios without realizing the home base. And I don't want to live like that the rest of my life. And that's the reason, and that's the determination, that's the principle that I want to capture. I think I have captured in this instance, but it's just have to be a continuous process of action, practicing it. So that's my reminder for myself. But if this is something meaningful for you, listener, I'm happy to share it. Have peace with you, because the peace exists within us instead of out somewhere by fixing this and that. That's one thing we can do, but we need to work on fixing our being if we are to be clear in what we are doing and making the right decision so that we don't get lost easily. Thank you.